What's up, beautiful people? Today we are taking a look at the impact of World War I on the US home front through political cartoons. In our last video, we left off with this political cartoon and the US declaration of war. And while America did make some preparations for the possibility of war prior to the actual declaration of war, there was still much mobilizing to be done. The woman in this poster symbolized a sleeping America, and in the background, the clouds of war gather, threatening the lady in the patriotic PJs. I wonder if you can get a pair of these pajamas at Target. This particular graphic, entitled The Battle Fronts of Europe from 1917, shows the areas between the Western and Eastern fronts in Europe overlaid over a map of the United States. The purpose of this was to wake up the American public to the military tasks that lay before them. Keep in mind, by the time the US entered the war, already millions of European soldiers had died. In spite of this, the American Expeditionary Forces led by John J. Pershing will play a key role in stopping a late attempt at a German offensive in France. This particular cartoon shows the Statue of Liberty, a gift from France to symbolize the friendship between the two countries, marching along with the American soldiers into battle. It was time for America to pay back the solid France did for the 13 colonies during the American Revolution. It will not just be soldiers that will need to be mobilized for war. This cartoon shows Uncle Sam organizing the railroad industry to help ensure the efficient transportation of war resources. During World War I, the federal government will create various agencies to ensure the nation's industry, fuel, food, and labor were able to meet the increased demand caused by the war effort. In this cartoon entitled Hoover Addresses the Troops, the importance of mobilizing the home front can be seen. Herbert Hoover was in charge of the U.S. Food Administration, which made sure Americans ate less food, such as meat and bread, so that more could be available for both American and Allied soldiers. Another part of mobilization during World War I was ensuring the American public supported the war effort. Patriotism and war hysteria fueled calls for 100% loyalty to the war effort and for people to remove the hyphen. It was assumed that German Americans, there's the hyphen, could not be both German and American, and bans were placed on the German language, music, and culture. As this cartoon illustrates, there was widespread fear that German Americans were going to be disloyal. As you can see, this big dude may pretend to wave the American flag in public, but privately he raises his German beer and loyalty to the Kaiser. The result of these fears were dramatic increases in intolerance on the home front. To combat these fears of disloyalty, Congress passed the Espionage and Sedition Act, which made it a crime to criticize the U.S. government both during and even after the war. During the Palmer raids, Americans thought to be disloyal, perceived and real radicals, immigrants, and even some labor groups were targeted by the U.S. government and arrested. And now back to this cartoon. Although Wilson wanted to make the world safe for democracy, African Americans and American women were denied democratic rights at the onset of World War I. In this cartoon, the caption reads, "Mr. President, why not make America safe for democracy?" Since black people were unable to vote throughout much of the South, and as a result of the demographic changes caused by the Great Migration, horrific race riots broke out during and after the war. Some criticized the idealistic goals set out for the war when America had problems of its own they had not properly addressed. In spite of Wilson's idealism, he completely ignored the racial injustices taking place throughout the United States. A good thing that does come out of World War I and the home front is the right to vote for American women. As a result of the contributions of American women, not to mention they were putting the pressure on Wilson, women's wartime service increased support for women's suffrage, thus allowing the 19th Amendment to be ratified shortly after the war. And as you can see on this cartoon, it says, if you are good enough for war, you are good enough to vote. Ain't that sweet? That's going to do it for today's video. Be sure to check out the next video in this series, in which we will be taking a look at the post-war negotiations, the battle over the League of Nations and the Treaty of Versailles, and all sorts of other cool stuff. Until next time, thanks for watching. Tell me which cartoon was your favorite in the comments, and have a beautiful day. Peace.